Testing 1, 2, 3. What's going on, guys? It is Kevin Zwicker from Fast Count. This is your Night of Champions post show. Guys, if you don't remember while we're going out through this stream, please remember at some point to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. It helps the channel out in more ways than you even know. Now, when it comes to these Saudi shows, they are very hit or miss. We've had very good matches in the past. We also have had very bad matches in the past, i.e. matches like, Goldberg versus The Undertaker, or, that DX versus the Brothers of Destruction match. What's going on, Bishop? You doing all right? But this is a very interesting show going into it, right? We all know that we had the King and the Queen of the Ring tournament going on, but we also had this final encounter between CM Punk and John Cena, right? Now, throughout this whole John Cena, retirement tour, it's been very hit or miss, right? There's been matches where you can look at it and be like, okay, this is very solid. But then there's matches like what happened at WrestleMania between him and Cody Rhodes, which it looks as if we're going to get that rematch as what went down tonight. But very interesting to say that this match between him and CM Punk, right? Obviously, it wasn't as good as what it was when it was in their prime. But for what stages that they're at currently right now, I thought it was very entertaining. They had all the smoke and whistles, all of the things that you could get to where it's, you can distract it, and for the stages that they're at. Bishop, I'm going to talk about it in a second, but I'm very intrigued about, what went down, right? Follow me along when I start talking about what went down with that Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton match, because I want to bounce some ideas off of your head, right? We're going to start from there, right? That was the opening match. Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton. This is a match that a lot of people have been wanting to see ever since Cody Rhodes has made his return to the WWE and Randy Orton has healed up from his back injury, right? Which we saw was in play throughout this match, right? This is a big match. Whoever wins this, obviously, they're going to go to main event for the championship at SummerSlam. And this wasn't the typical Cody Rhodes that we saw throughout his return, right? This wasn't the typical babyface. I don't know if you paid attention, but there was an interview earlier in the week where Cody Rhodes was talking about how he feels as if this may be, the final stretch of his run as a babyface. If you remember that interview that Pat McAfee had with The Rock following what went down at WrestleMania, The Rock talked about how he originally wanted Cody Rhodes to turn heel, and Triple H was the one who basically put the kibosh on that and was turning John Cena heel, right? And that's what we're at this stage right now. But Cody Rhodes was very heelish throughout this whole match. It was a spot earlier in the ring where Randy Orton hurt his back. He was selling the back injury throughout this whole match. And other than being the typical babyface that you would think that Cody Rhodes would be, you saw the complete opposite. You saw Cody Rhodes, take advantage of that. You saw him attack Randy Orton's back multiple different times throughout this match. You saw him, go for the back on different occasions, whether it was the beginning of the match, middle of the match, in the end. Very heelish. It's getting to the point where I'm starting to think that at SummerSlam, we might get that Bret Hart versus Steve Austin moment. Obviously, the very famous match that they had at WrestleMania where we saw a double turn. It could be possibly setting up to where we get that double turn at SummerSlam. I think all of us pretty much would agree that before this retirement tour ends with John Cena, we are going to see a John Cena face turn, right? We also saw cracks throughout that, in the main event with him and CM Punk. So it's a very good possibility that that could be the direction. And I think that that might be the way to go because, Cody Rhodes, obviously, he's the biggest babyface in the company, but there is an heir apparent to that throne. This wasn't when John Cena was in his prime where it was, if John Cena turns heel, we don't have a babyface that could be on equal standing. There is a guy who there is equal standing, could be that marquee babyface in the WWE if they do decide to turn Cody Rhodes heel. And that guy is Jey Uso. Whether you're a fan of his matches or not, you can't disagree with the fact that he gets these very positive reactions. He sells merch. And in the wrestling business, keyword business, he has been very successful. So they do have that guy, right? At the end of the day, we see Cody Rhodes win. We see a moment in time where Randy Orton brings a steel chair into the ring to try to distract the referee. Where the referee has his back turned, he exposes the turnbuckle. We see a struggle between the two guys, Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes, to see who are going to use it. At the end of the day, Cody Rhodes was able to take advantage of that. He was able to shove Randy Orton's ribs into the turnbuckle. We get a crossroads. 1, 2, 3. Randy Orton is your king of the ring for 2025, right? And he does this speech. And I don't think this is the end of this, right, when it comes to Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes. Because if you notice while Cody Rhodes was giving his victory speech, he was very much so telling the crowd to applaud for Randy Orton, give their respects to him. Obviously, he is a guy who's pretty much filled in that Undertaker role as this veteran who is the locker room leader because he's the most tenured guy and he's never been anywhere else. But you see Randy Orton, grimacing, having this, flashbacks of bald Randy Orton to where it's like, there's something to this. This isn't going to be the end. We could possibly see Randy Orton screw Cody Rhodes when it comes to SummerSlam or some type of build, but it's not the end between these two guys. But as of right now, we're going to see a rematch from WrestleMania. Cody Rhodes one-on-one with John Cena for the championship. Let's go to the comment section. Salty Grampy, what's going on, Pops? Cody needs a Cena moment. I think we're going to be right there. I think we're close to it. I don't think that, we're very far away from it. Bishops, Cody will lose and be driven insane and become the bad guy because he is a baby face. And what better than to see someone lose and become a monster? Nothing is scarier than a man with nothing to lose. You're very right. And I think that's the story. When we first got this John Cena heel turn, right, where we saw the moment go down at Elimination Chamber with The Rock and Travis Scott, I thought that's the angle that they were going to go with this John Cena heel turn, right? If you remember throughout these returns that John Cena has sporadically made throughout, the last several years, he's been on a very big losing streak. So I thought the proper way to initiate, the reason as to why he would have sold his soul to The Rock was basically in saying, guys, if you haven't noticed, I've lost all these amount of times throughout, these last several years. I'm a guy who's at the end of my rope. There's nothing more important to me than winning 17. So I am going to be a guy who basically I'm in a situation where I have nothing to lose. So I sold my soul to The Rock to do something for me because all this time I've been doing all of this for you. I thought that would have been the perfect way and the most logical, way to where you would have started off the Cena run. But I think with The Rock, basically piecing out after that, Elimination Chamber moment, it kind of put everybody in scramble mode. But I agree with you. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what it's going to be like to have this Cody Rhodes heel turn. Because if you notice, it's not like when you look back at, Hogan's heel turn, where he was getting these, mixed reactions in WCW, where it depended on what city you were in where he was going to get booed or cheered. Cody Rhodes is still very much popular, still very much so, a guy who sells a lot of merch and stuff. So to me, it's like, is it the right time? Is there more meat on the bone when it comes to the face turn? Because for me, the crowd kind of dictates whether it's time for you to turn. And the crowd is still very much so behind Cody Rhodes. But there is some interesting stories to tell, right? With a heel Cody Rhodes, especially with the different matchups that we could possibly get, with the dynamic changing. But that's something to watch. When it comes to SummerSlam, there is a possibility we could get that double face turn. And you've got to expect that there's going to be something huge going down on that show, right? With the fact that now it's 2 nights, it's basically become a summer version of WrestleMania. So you would expect that something big is going to go down on the show. Guys, please remember to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe if you haven't. It helps the channel out in more ways than you know. And always remember, it's free. Next, we're going to go into the street fight between Raquel Rodriguez and Rhea Ripley, right? And I think the fact that we're going into this PLE, obviously Liv Morgan is out. That is going to be a big deal going forward when it comes to Raquel because she's now at this point where she's carrying both titles. I think the obvious move, what's going to be is they're just going to have, Roxy be one half of the tag team titles, Roxanne Perez, while Liv Morgan is out. You can continue that story that they were planting seeds for before Liv Morgan got hurt, where Roxanne is becoming, this replacement for Liv. And I'm assuming that Liv is going to come back, hopefully, fingers crossed, because with shoulders, it's very interesting. I remember, breaking my clavicle when I was a teenager. It hurt like the most pain I've ever felt in my life, right? It was about like an 8-week recovery. But the fact that she was able to separate her shoulder, she's going to be out for at least 6 months. there's still some time. WrestleMania is not out of the question. The Royal Rumble is not out of the question. It just depends on how hard she attacks rehab and how quickly that she's going to be able to recover, right? But this match was very good. Going into it, I think majority of us would have expected that, of course, Rhea Ripley's going to win, right? I don't think that was a surprise at all. Rhea Ripley is, the 1A to 1B when it comes to who is the face of the women's division. I think Stephanie McCure is right there, right? Right there. She's right there behind Rhea Ripley now with just how hot she's been since she's made her main roster debut. And even since she's joined the company in the whole, I think she's gained so much, traction, whether, when it comes to the fan base and what she's able to do, and especially, with her finisher, that's probably the most over finishing move in all of professional wrestling at the moment. She's right there on nipping on Rhea Ripley's, heels, right? But throughout this match, you saw the typical, it really felt as if it was a Hulk Hogan match, right? Where if you guys, remember Hulk Hogan if this was a 15-minute match, Hulk Hogan would spend, 10 of those 15 minutes getting his ass kicked, do his moves, and then pick up big boot, leg drop, win, right? But that was interesting where we saw different spots where Rhea was really getting her ass kicked, right? We saw the spot that we've seen on multiple different occasions, which is always painful to see, when you have your arms wrapped up in the rope and you're getting hit multiple times throughout the kendo sticks. We got a tease of a chair shot to the head, but obviously this is 2025, so they were able to not have that. Rhea Ripley, she gave Raquel Rodriguez a kick to the face. We see them brawl on the outside. We see Raquel Rodriguez deliver a power bomb on the timekeeper's table, which looked like it felt very painful. But my favorite spot of the match was when we see Rhea Ripley really live up to her mommy nickname and break out that belt and give Raquel Rodriguez a few lashes with the belt. As we all know, when you disrespect mommy, the belt comes out, right? And that's what we were able to see. But the most talked about spot that everybody's probably going to go out of this match and they're going to take away from it is that spot where I don't think I've ever seen this before, right? Or if we've seen it, it's been extremely rare, where we see a table on the top rope being positioned, right? And this wasn't the Slim Jim table, by the way. This was a normal table. We didn't see any branding on the table this week, which is a little bit strange to me, right? I guess this was one of those leftover tables that I'm assuming that they have a ring in Saudi Arabia, and they just weren't able to sit there and brand it before they had this spot, right? Jeez. Bishop was a naughty boy, man. But we see them position the table on the top rope, and then we see Rhea Ripley hit the riptide on top of off of that table for the 1, 2, 3. Rhea Ripley is now 32-3 under Triple H's regime, right? Which is impressive, right? That is an insane run. The way that she's been able to, accumulate all these different wins and lose so sporadically on during this Triple H run. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but she did her interview with Chris Van Vliet, which is kind of a rite of passage when it comes to any wrestler who has any type of name in the business. And she talked about how during Vince McMahon's creative run, he didn't know what to do with her, right? Because if you look at Rhea Ripley, with the makeup and all the different, tattoos and all, you can maybe assume if you aren't somebody who follows the product that she is a heel. But she was getting the reactions of a babyface, and he was just stuck in his ways and not being able to really accept the fact that the audience views her as a babyface and wasn't really able to do that, right? But it was interesting. Let me go back to the comments a little bit, scroll up. That's why it'd be a killer move. I accept them cheeks of hers. Hey, man. She's not the biggest baby face in the women's division for nothing, right? No need to turn Cody. I think a young kid that should take the belt from Cena. He did an interview when he talked about that, and I think that's the direction that we're going to go. I think once he has his last match, which is going to be in Boston, I'm assuming the way that they're positioning that, it's going to be, a Saturday night's main event, or it's just going to be a special on its own, like John Cena's last match. We're just going to market it as that. He did his interview with Idris Elba promoting their movie that's coming on Amazon on The Breakfast Club, and the way that he was talking and the way that he was answering these questions, it kind of felt as if that's what he was hinting at, right? That he was going to pass the torch to a young guy. I hope it's not Joe Hendry, right? Joe Hendry is somebody who's been very open about how John Cena is his hero. And Joe Hendry, he's a guy who's been able to really, get over on his own and really been creative. But when I fantasy book in my mind who is going to be Cena's last match, it's not him, right? But who knows? We still got a little bit of times away from where we're going to see what's going to go down. So, Bishop, the most pain I felt is when you left your old job. Which job was that? Which job is that? She is a flagship. I mean, she was all Call of Duty. Is a G spot. Rhea has a dummy mommy feel like a man. Who is it? We work together? Circle K. Give me your real name. It is you, Jasir. Oh my goodness, man. It's so funny. If you guys don't know, I worked at Circle K on and off for about 4 years, right? From 2020, no, about 5 years, 2020 or the end of 2019, maybe around that time to about just recently, within the last month or two, I quit. And that job was insane, right? I'm not going to tell you guys your favorite security guard from the station. Oh, that's you, Sean. But that job was fucking insane, right? I'm not going to tell you guys exactly what city, but I live in North Carolina. And the store that I worked at is probably in one of the worst spots of the city, right? And you just see, and I know this is off topic. Majority of you guys don't give a fuck about what I got going on in my personal business, in my personal life. But Dre, it's probably I know. You don't even like wrestling like that, dude. So that's crazy that you're up in here. But that was the craziest fucking store I ever worked at. You would see crackheads go and you see them OD in the bathroom. You would see people shit on the floor. You would see, a whole bunch of different things, man. It was an insane spot. But thank God I left, right? And I'm doing this for you guys. Next, we're going to go into Sami Zayn versus Karrion Kross. You texted my phone like I'm not on live. I get it. What's up, man? It's about supporting my peoples. I appreciate that, man. Just hit the like button. Hit the like button helps. I know you don't really care about wrestling, so you don't got to be in here or not, but it's good. Hitting the like button helps. I appreciate you being in here, though. How's the jewelry business going on? It's going okay? But we go into Sami Zayn versus Karrion Kross, right? And Sami Zayn obviously going into this, it was very much so a big time test for Karrion Kross, right? Karrion Kross is somebody who's been able to organically get over with the crowd. He's been able to sell merch, as we all know. He's somebody who's just doing this thing on his own, right? Which in the past would have got him, major heat, right? We all seen this happen before. Zack Ryder, as we all know, he was able to get over on his own with his YouTube channel and been able to sell all these different merches. And that was something that penalized him, right? And it was just like, it's a new day and a new era. But this was a big time test for him because, as we know, if you've been paying attention, Karrion doesn't wrestle a lot. We don't see him wrestling on our television screen outside of main event on a weekly basis. So this was an opportunity for him to really showcase what he's able to do on a big time stage against a big time opponent who is going to be very over in the the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And I can't necessarily say that he delivered, right? Now, Karrion, when you look at the guy, you can tell just by how big of a man he is, he's somebody, right? Whether it's an athlete, whether it's a wrestler, you could just look at the guy and tell that he is somebody. But it's just, with all these different rumors coming out, surrounding him, whether it's the fact that he doesn't want to take bumps, which I think that's one of those rumors that is so insane that I don't even really think I could give too much credence into it. But Sami Zayn was able to carry this match, and I'm not going to say Cross failed, but he didn't pass with flying colors. Obviously Sammy was going to get the win because I think that they're going to figure out a way to prolong the story between the two because their backstage interactions have been interesting. I think they've been able to pique a lot of people's interest with what they're doing. And with the story that they're telling that that Karrion Kross is, we're not Karrion Kross, that Sami Zayn is trying to make his way to be a champion. They're going to be able to prolong this story a little bit, but Kross, I saw somebody on Twitter sit there and say, this guy might want to be a manager or something. Kross needs to get in the ring from time to time. The elimination of house shows really, is a bummer. Not just from people who live in small, regions like where we live in, but the fact that you don't get these guys and girls to, wrestle in front of a crowd and try new things out, on a consistent basis, really, I think it's a detriment to their development. Now, I'm sure from a body standpoint and the fact that they get to be at home more often, I think that obviously that's pluses in there, but the downside of it is the fact that they don't get to try new things in front of new people to see maybe this works, maybe this doesn't work, maybe I should bring this to TV, maybe I should drop this from TV, get some experience, just running the ropes and all those things. Now, obviously, Kross is a vet. He's been doing this for a very long time, so he doesn't fall in this category. But you do get ring rust, due to the fact that you don't wrestle on a consistent basis. But that's just me ranting, right? Going off of the reservation. Next, we're going into Jacob Fatu versus Solo Sikoa for the U.S. Championship. This was a match that has been brewing for a very long time. Obviously, they've been telling the story that the reason why Jacob Fatu is even in the WWE is because we were able to see Solo Sikoa bring him in. And this match where we saw, do your little security. They would have bring. I told you when I make it big, man. I said I'm gonna need some security. I need a big ass person, that intimidates people. Bring your mans. That other security guard who come into the shop all the time. Bring your mans. Who you always be, kiki and smiling with all the time. You should bring him in too. He's a big ass motherfucker. He should be my security as well. But this match, when they were telling it, right? You knew, just based off of the rumors that we were hearing, that there was a good possibility that we were going to see the debut of Hikuleo on the main roster. Now, he's been doing all these different matches, all these different dark matches before the show, in between shows, but we haven't seen him on the main roster, right? And I know Jacob Fatu is somebody who obviously has a very bright future ahead of him. He's somebody who, ever since he's made his debut, whether it was him as a babyface, him as a heel, and now him as a babyface, he's gotten the support of the people. And I think that now, since we've seen Solo pick up this win and take the title from Jacob, people are going to be very invested in the chase of the title. Now, I think Jacob has a lot more brighter things to worry about than the U.S. title. I think the U.S. title fits Solo Sikoa very well as to the position that he's in right now. Going into this, I know that before we saw the rise of Jacob Fatu, it felt as if Solo Sikoa was going to be up next, but it just feels like now that Jacob is basically, he's been able to skyrocket past him, and he's been able to Wally Pip him. If you guys don't know what that means, the baseball reference, he's been able to take his spot, right? Well, and we saw multiple different interferences throughout this match, which makes sense with the storyline that they tell. Whether it's Roman Reigns' bloodline or Solo Sikoa's bloodline, you all know that we're going to be in store for a bunch of different interferences, right? We got the return of Tonga Loa, which is your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler, right? We see JC Mateo, Jeff Cobb get involved, and then we get the reveal of the debuting Hikuleo, and we see Solo Sikoa hit Jacob Fatu with the spike to gain the U.S. Championship, right? It's a perfect way to spice up that story. I think that the Bloodline story, whether it's, like I said, whether it's the OG Bloodline, this, Bloodline 2.0, Solo Sikoa's Bloodline, I think this is a never-ending story, but I think that the way that they were able to spice this up a little bit adding, Hikuleo back into the mix. Tonga Loa is back in the mix. We just need Tama Tonga, to recover from his injury, and we'll be able to see what they're able to really do with a full deck of cards moving forward with this story. Next, we are going to get into the Queen of the Ring finals between Jade Cargill and Asuka. Jade Cargill is obviously somebody who is an action figure in real life, right? Once she is done with her WWE run, she is going to be a superstar, right? Whether it's in movies, TV, whatever it is going to be big, right? And I think this was the perfect position for her to really plateau to the next level, right? The women's division, whether it's NXT, SmackDown, or Raw, is very stacked. We all know, like I said, with Stephanie McCure coming in, we have Julia fresh off of winning the U.S. Championship. We have Jordynne Grace waiting in the wings. And we also have the return of Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair. You see all these different faces, so it's hard for certain people to really stand out. And this was Jade's opportunity to really make a statement and for her to punch her ticket into the championship match for SummerSlam. And she was able to do that. I think Asuka was the perfect opponent for her to do that with. Asuka, somebody who, as we all know, has the fanfare from the people, very experienced when it comes to strong style, or she's been able to adapt very nicely to the WWE style throughout the years. In a way that they were able to tell this, Jade looked as if, there was different moments where it was just kind of miscommunication, a little bit of awkwardness. We see that with the last, Queen of the Ring qualifier match with Jade as well, that it just feels like, something might be a little bit off, right? But Jade was able to pick up the win. We see this moment where Asuka is running the ropes. She was able to get caught like a Venus flytrap from Jade, hit the Jaded. 1, 2, 3, Jade wins. Jade wasn't getting the best reception from the people in Saudi Arabia. Don't know what that's about. Somebody will be able to clear that up for me a little bit more. But, hey, she gets the win. She is going to, and I think it's going to happen too. I can easily see it where she wins the championship, whether it's off of Tiffany Stratton or off of the champion on Raw. I think she'd be wrestling Tiffany Stratton because she's on SmackDown. I can see Jade pick up the championship, right? And then I can see it be a very physical match between her and Tiffany Stratton. And then we see Naomi cash the Money in the Bank briefcase with her. Naomi takes the title. And then we get this interesting story where the dynamics have changed, where you have Jade chasing Naomi for the title. OnlyFans? This man said OnlyFans. If you don't know, most female wrestlers, once they, if they get let go by the WWE, that's usually the route that they go to, right? There's 2 wrestlers that recently were released. Cora Jade is one of them, and I forgot who was the other one. Who was the other one? It'll come back to me. But one of them they opened up an OnlyFans as well. And she said she made more money in a week than she did like a whole year under her WWE contract. So, hey, but the difference between Jade and those women is Jade's husband's a millionaire. If you don't know, Jade's husband is former, MLB second baseman Brandon Phillips, who's, I'm sure, not very hungry, right? So I'm sure Jade will not have to go the OnlyFans route. Knox. That Tegan Knox, that's who it was. How do you know that, Pops? Did you subscribe? Don't make me tell Michelle. Next, we're going into the main event. The match that most people have been wanting to see when this match was announced a few weeks ago. John Cena, CM Punk. This is my personal favorite John Cena rival. I know most people, when they think of John Cena's rival, they go Randy Orton. My personal favorite has always been CM Punk. I think out of all of the opponents that he's had throughout his 20-plus year career, his best opponents have always been CM Punk, Edge, and Kevin Owens, not in that order. And this match, for the stages that they're at, obviously CM Punk and John Cena are both guys who are in their late 40s. They're not the same guys that were 10 years ago, but they were able to do the best for what they have right now, right? This is 2 guys who are at the Cena tail end of his career. CM Punk, don't know how many years he plans on going anymore, but obviously these are the last couple of years that we're going to see, right? But it felt as if this match was like a greatest hits performance, right? Whether you see bands from the 80s like, Kiss go overseas and have these concerts where they are performing for, a Saudi prince or another prince, or you see other individuals like, maybe Fat Joe or all these other people, in the hip hop community, it felt as if you were going to get the greatest hits, right? And that's what we got. We saw the AAs, we saw the GTSs, we saw the taunts, we saw all of the things that made you remember why you enjoyed this rivalry in the first place. But what went down, the way that they were able to save this match and really put a bow on things, they were able to inject the fact that Seth Rollins is the Money in the Bank winner. And it got to a point where you saw the referee go down. And once you saw the referee go down, if you followed wrestling, just any amount of time throughout your fandom, when the referee goes down that you're going to see some shenanigans. And that's exactly what we got, right? We see the ref go down. We see Seth Rollins' music hit. He sits there and he calls the dogs, Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker, on CM Punk. And it's just, look, I'm all for long-term storytelling. I like long-term storytelling just as much as any other wrestling fan, but at what point do we move on from that storyline? These guys have been beefing for 2 years. Ever since CM Punk has made his return to the WWE, he has been beefing with Seth Rollins. It's time to move on. Do people get tired of seeing the same shit? Now, there's people who are probably still sitting around eating it up like it's, the first time we've ever seen it. But damn. But we see CM Punk getting taken out. We see Seth Rollins call for the ref to come. And while Charles Robinson is running down the ramp, we see John Cena hit him with a shoulder bump, takes him out. John Cena and Seth Rollins, they sit there and they go back and forth. John Cena's like, nah, not this time, right? Then we see John Cena hit Seth Rollins with an AA. Bronson Reed, and then Braun Breaker, they were able to get back into the ring and they were able to handle John Cena, but he was saved by Penta. And not only was he saved by Penta, Penta was getting the beast by Braun Breaker, and he was saved by Sami Zayn, who got his hero's welcome earlier in the night after his match. So we see all this chaos going down. We see all of these different things going down. You hear the crowd chanting for OTC. Little do they know, Roman Reigns does not work unless he has to. So in my mind, there was no way we were going to see the tribal chief. And he didn't appear because, like I said, Roman Reigns works when he feels like working, right? But then we get to a point where the ring clears out. We have John Cena. We have CM Punk. They're sitting there, two guys who have gone through all these battles throughout the year. They're just standing next to each other in front of each other. CM Punk offers a handshake. CM Punk and John Cena shake hands. Then we get that view that we all know from WrestleMania, right? Not WrestleMania, from the Elimination Chamber, where we see that deadpan stare from John Cena. He goes to kick CM Punk in the balls, like we've seen multiple different times. CM Punk catches him. We see Seth Rollins come back into the ring, screw CM Punk. We see John Cena hit the AA, 1, 2, 3. John Cena retains. The heel run ensues, but the part that I missed from talking about it earlier was we see John Cena, and we've seen this throughout his run where he has the title, and he plans to hit his opponent in the head with the title, right? But we see John Cena throw it to the ground. We don't see him act on those urges, which is a slight hint that John Cena is on his way back to being a babyface, right? And like I said, we get these hints from John Cena that he could be returning to a babyface. We get these hints from Cody Rhodes that he could be turning a heel. So it makes the dynamics heading into SummerSlam a bit interesting because you don't know how it's going to go. There's a possibility that a double turn is on the horizon. It makes that a bit more interesting because ring-wise, I don't see how they're going to be able to. Well, shit, their match at WrestleMania was bad, so I don't think you can get any worse than what we got. So anything is going to be an improvement, right? But these added layers, these added dynamics makes it to where I'm slightly more interested in what is going to go down, right? But all in all, this is a very solid show. I think they were able to deliver in what they were able to do. the fact that we have all these different shows lined up, within the next couple of weeks. We got Evolution. We have Great American Bash NXT. We have Saturday night's main event with Goldberg's last match. We have All In going on, all in the same weekend. All these things are kind of stacking up against each other. So it was going to be a challenge for them to differentiate this show with all the other shows coming up, but I think that they were able to accomplish that, right? Let me go into the comments one more time before I head out, because I got a lot of shit I got to record too, right? No, we just had the interwebs. Now I'd be on OnlyPants for the cook. CM Punk is a goofball. He is the Deadpool of WWE. You can make that sense, right? Deadpool breaks the fourth wall. CM Punk breaks the fourth wall. The Rock and Stone Cold was gold, and Triple H just hated everyone. He did. Triple H is a mad hater. Triple H didn't like CM Punk either. JR on his podcast was talking about, when CM Punk was on the come up, right? And obviously Triple H is somebody who now, but even back then, before he was the COO and the creative chief officer, where he had this position now, he was somebody who had a lot of stroke back then, right? Pause. Due to the fact that he was married to the boss's daughter. But JR was talking about how he was talking with Triple H, and CM Punk was brought it up, and Triple H said that, Punk's ass is too fat to be a top guy. Pause. Super, super, super pause on that. But it's just things like that are just so strange in the wrestling business, right? That a man would even say something like that about another man, and that way, as a way to, kind of keep them down from advancing, right? Weird. Triple H is, very strange guy, right? Rollins needs to cash in on a random SmackDown. Possibly, you want to do it where the most eyeballs are on, right? I think something is going to go down that people are going to be able to talk about after SummerSlam, because with it being 2 days now, it's bound for us to get something insane, right? Whether it's return of The Rock, whether it's a cash in, whether it's a double turn, we're going to see something go down, right? We're going to see something go down. But guys, before I get out of here, please remember, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't. It helps the channel out in more ways than you even know. A random SmackDown or two would actually be better off there. Well, they're turning the show back to 2 hours. The 4th of July edition, it's back to 2 hours, which is good. Very good in my opinion. But think about this, right? And this is something that's debated between people. I brought this up, right? People are celebrating the fact that SmackDown is going back to 2 hours, right? Doesn't that say something about the quality of your show, that people are celebrating that you're giving me less of it? Now, I know 3 hours for any wrestling show is daunting, right? Very daunting. It's not impossible to make an interesting wrestling show for 3 hours on a weekly basis, but it's very difficult to do, right? But we've seen stretches throughout the history of this 3 hour era where there's been a good stretch of 3 hour shows on a regular basis, right? But the fact that people are celebrating, hey, we're going back to 2 hours, for me, that's an indictment of what people think of the quality of your show. But that's just my opinion, right? But who knows? But guys, I'm out of here. I'll be going live Monday after Raw, like I do every week. We're going to go live on Wednesday after Dynamite, and we're going to have wall-to-wall coverage the weekend of July 12th. Because like I said, Saturday night's main event, Evolution, All In, Great American Bash, all of these shows crammed into the same weekend. But you're going to get wall-to-wall coverage on everything that's important that goes down that weekend. We'll probably go live just after All In. Who knows? Evolution is the day after, so it could go live after that as well. Just depends on how I feel. But you're going to get coverage, whether it's shorts, individual videos. You're going to get something about everything, right? Guys, I am Kevin Zwicker. I'm out.